Hello everyone, welcome back to another edition of the Benchwarmer Sports Podcast. Raffi here, joined by Davian. Davian, the MLB playoffs are about to begin very shortly, and with that, I think now is the time for us to take a look on the MLB season as a whole, do our research, get everything all sorted out for our official MLB playoff predictions. Now the MLB playoffs are soon to kick off, and with that in mind, Davian, neither of us will just flat out say, neither of us are too into watching baseball throughout the regular season. I like to keep tabs on the Cubs. I'm sure you keep tabs on the Yankees throughout the year. But when it comes to the MLB postseason, it really is second to none. I love the NHL playoffs. I love March Madness, but the MLB postseason is right up there as well with just some of the best games that you'll ever see. Every pitch really does matter at the end of the day. So I'm really excited to give my MLB playoff prediction, especially because this year both our teams are in, which is even better than years past, where it's typically just the Yankees. So before we get into that, Davian, how are you doing? How are you feeling? You got a fun series with the Red Sox that I cannot wait to get started. That's going to be a fantastic series. But overall, how are you?
I'm a bit under the weather, so it's a bit of a Michael Jordan flu game type performance going to be happening today during this podcast. But I'm super excited about these playoffs that are about to go right underway. I mean, I think there's a lot of really interesting storylines. A lot of storylines are kind of clear what's going to happen, but a lot of exciting games. And like you mentioned, yes, the Yankees, Red Sox, I think are going to be an absolutely amazing game. But we'll get all into that. Rafi, let's kick it off with the National League wildcard games. Let's start off with the obvious one, right? That being the Dodgers against the Reds. I'm going to take the Dodgers. I think that the story that the Cincinnati Reds have had throughout the season has been nothing short of miraculous, especially with the Mets just choking their season away. But this Dodgers team is just too dominant, I think, for the Reds to be able to handle. Even in a series, best of game was series of 3. Miraculously, they might win one game, but I could see the Dodgers just taking the first 2 games and then just moving on.
Yeah, October does have its ways of being very crazy and chaotic. We saw that a few years ago when we got Rangers Diamondbacks in the World Series title, which was just very unpredictable. And then obviously last year we got the very predictable Yankees versus Dodgers. But typically October ball isn't just the 2 best teams wind up facing off for the World Series. But I agree with you here. The Reds getting to the playoffs, all the shout out to them. Ellie De La Cruz has been fantastic this year for the Reds, really helping this team get to the point where they're able to get into the playoffs. But in my mind, when the Reds made the playoffs, it was more of the Mets backing out of the postseason than the Reds really taking that. They were barely hovering around 500 for most of September. They really weren't anything crazy down the stretch, where we see with another team that we'll talk about shortly, the Guardians were on an absolute tear to get into the postseason. So I agree with you. I think the Dodgers town just overwhelms the Reds, and shout out to the Reds. They made the postseason for the first time in a while, but I agree with you. I think this is a pretty easy prediction in my mind, Dodgers over Reds. Let's move on to the other series in the NL, and that's my Chicago Cubs taking on the San Diego Padres. Cubs finally back in the postseason for the first time in 2020. We will not be speaking about what happened instead 2020. Let's just say that I'm happy now that there's 3 games for a wild card. It's a 3-game series and not a 1 game, because I don't know your opinion, David. And maybe once I'm done with my prediction, you can speak about this, but I personally like the 3 games a lot more than the 1 game, just because I like the 1 game because everything comes down to this, but it just, for me personally, I just like having 3 games. I think it's just better for the MLB, adding another team and then also having 3-game series. But to get into the Cubs versus Padres, Cade Horton, the Cubs ace, being out, I think really does hurt the Cubs. It's a lot of these teams that I pick tend to have a really good ace pitcher that's going to be starting game 1, and then it's, if they take game 1, which they likely will, then it's you win one of the next 2, and I really like the odds of the team who wins game 1 to win one of the next 2 rather than the team that has to win 2. It's simple fundamental probability statistics math. But I do think that does hurt them. The big thing for them is going to be if PCA and Kyle Tucker really look the part. Kyle Tucker's been dealing with some injuries the past month, so if he's good to go and if he can get back to the form that he was in earlier in the season, same with PCA, then I really think that this Cubs team has the potential to beat the Padres. The big thing for me is just the Padres have a little more star power. They seem to be hitting, and both teams have been teams that have shown flashes of being one of the top teams in the NL, but neither team has really lived up to that potential. I'm going to go with the Padres. I think their pitching with Cade Horton out is a little better, and it's tough for me to pick against the Cubs because it's at Wrigley too, but I'm going to bet on the upside of the star players on the Padres over the Cubs. But I really do hope I'm proven wrong because the Cubs playing the Brewers would be so much fun to watch.
Yeah, Rafi, this is where I'm gonna divert and really lean into the October Madness idea. I think that look, like we both agree that the Cubs are only gonna win if they are able to hit strong and fast right away. The Padres manager Mike Schultz, he's known for really throughout the season really pushing his superb bullpen out there on the field, and especially in a wild card series where you have only 3 games, he's gonna push them out early, and especially if at Wrigley Field the Cubs are able to really take advantage of home field advantage and take advantage of that and really change the script around and really be able to hit well. I think that's gonna where it's gonna come down to, because definitely the Padres definitely have the bullpen advantage and the bullpen advantage, and so the only way that the Cubs are able to win is if they have that hitting advantage, and that batting advantage, and that's only going to really happen if, like you said, Kyle Tucker and PCA really step up to the plate. Whether that's going to happen or not, I am cheering for the Cubs the same way I'm cheering for the Yankees. Rafi, I know that you like to always take the safe approach with these predictions. I like to go more into leaning into madness. Look, I'm not picking the Reds, all right? So let me have a little bit of madness out here.
Yeah, and again, too, with the Cubs Padres is a 4-5. A lot of these are, if you went with the Reds, I feel like going with the Reds would be really the only off the board pick that you can make with
definitely.
the wild card. I feel like everything else is pretty much a toss up, as we'll move over to the AL in a moment. But yeah, a lot of these are I've seen people who have the 5 seed make the World Series, teams have the 4 seed. I don't think that the Guardians are going to go on a deep run, but the Guardians have been a team that have been really hot down the stretch, really defying all odds. They have allowed more runs than they've scored more runs, which is really odd to see a team like that with a negative run differential make it to the postseason in the first place. But the Guardians were on an absolute tear to end their regular season in September, only losing a couple of games. And with the Tigers were slumping a lot, and it really felt like, well, one team was heating up, the other team was on the decline. They wound up meeting, and it wound up being the Guardians who were going to have home field advantage as they won the division, just edging out the Detroit Tigers. Now, this is my thing where my logic with the Cubs was if Cade Horn was starting game 1, I'd feel a lot more comfortable with the Cubs. I like Skubal a lot in game 1. I think that the Tigers are going to take game 1, and I think the Tigers are going to win one of the next 2 games, even though they're at Cleveland. I really do like the mentality that the Tigers have of now it's 0-0 for everyone. Forget about what happened in the regular season. It's a good reset opportunity. And at the end of the day, they're still in the postseason. They didn't pull a Mets where they just completely backed out of the playoffs. And I think the Tigers are going to be able to take this home. I think Skubal takes game 1, and I think the Tigers do have enough hitting and pitching to take on the Guardians and move on to the next round. I don't know how far the Tigers go after that, but I do think that they'll handle business versus the Guardians and have a really nice bounce back series after slumping a lot in September.
Yeah, I mean, Rafi, this is where I kind of will have to disagree with you because, look, Skubal on the mound is almost a guaranteed win for the Tigers. I think we can both agree with that. But the Guardians have had a fantastic September. I think they won 9. Oh, no. I think they won. I forgot exactly how many games they won of their last 10, but it was I think it was like 7 out of the last 10. And so, at the end of the day, I think that besides Skubal, the Guardians have the starting pitching advantage and a big bullpen, a deeper bullpen at the end of the day. And I think that's what's really going to let them win those 2 games afterwards after game 1. Granted, though, it's much harder to win 2 games in a row than for the Tigers to lose a game and then win game 3, for example. So it'll definitely be difficult. I think that it'll be interesting to see if the Guardians can really defy the odds like that. But I would not be surprised if the Tigers were to come out of this based off your logic, Rafi, which I think makes a lot of sense. But I think that the 2 competing logics we have right now is either A, it's really you winning game 1 and you only need one more game, or 2, you're coming into the playoffs with much more momentum versus a team that is basically limped into the playoffs. And so it'll be interesting to see what really happens there.
And Javi Baez, we trust. Moving on to the best series, in my personal opinion, or the series that I'm the most excited about. Obviously, I'm excited for my Cubs. I really am, but Yankees-Red Sox, 3-game series to determine who moves on to the NLDS. It really, the fact that things lined up for these two teams to play against each other is absolutely fantastic. The Yankees have been on an absolute tear. I'll hand it over to you, Davian, to give your thoughts first before I give my thoughts. But the Yankees have been scorching hot down the stretch and really have been flat out fantastic with their hitting.
Yeah, I feel like you put it best right there, Rafi. I mean, the Yankees have won 9 of their last 10, but I will say this is where my biggest concern is. It's the bullpen. It has been so inconsistent at times throughout this season. It has made my friends and myself rip our hair, like just turn off the game. It's just been so bad at times. And so it needs to be perfect against this Red Sox team, especially with players with the boogeyman like Alex Bregman out on the field, no longer in Astros jersey, now in the Red Sox jersey. And also you have, and then switching sides onto the hitting side, the hitting needs to be consistent for the Yankees as well. It needs to be continue to stay red hot because you're going to have people like Aroldis Chapman, who's been playing great this year, coming in with some sort of a vengeance, I think, in some ways. So, look, the Red Sox are dangerous because of their strong outfield defense and their flexibility with their left-handed hitters. And the bullpen, of course, gives them a lot more strength over the Yankees. But at the end of the day, I still need to pick the Yankees, and not just because they are my team, but simply because of this hitting. With Aaron Judge just being red hot throughout this season, especially the end of the season, and the rest of the hittings, the rest of the players. I mean, I'm at a loss of words because I really think that this Yankees team looks very good, and I really do think that they're gonna take this Red Sox series in 2 games, and a best of 2 out of the 3. I think they will drop a game at some point, but I gotta take the Yankees here.
Yeah, it's really an offense versus defensive battle with these two teams. The Red Sox more well known for their defense. You mentioned Chapman, who's been one of their top relievers this year, really rolling back the clock. And Garrett Crochet is one of the top pitchers in the AL and just in the entire major league. And that's going to be the big matchup that I'm looking for when we look to game 1 where Crochet is going to be facing off against the Yankees. The Yankees have yet to really solve Crochet. Crochet's had the better hand when he's gone up against the Yankees this season. The Yankees haven't really been able to solve him, and that's going to be the big matchup that I'm looking at, especially if the Red Sox can take game 1. The big question then is going to just come down to, can the Yankees hit their way out of it? If the Yankees take game 1 versus Crochet and are able to beat him for the first time, I believe, this entire season, then I think the Yankees can certainly take one of the games 2 or 3. I don't think that's really out of the question. But again, it's hard to win. I'd rather take the team who wins game 1 over the team who loses game 1. So I think that's going to be the big matchup. I have the Yankees as well, just because the hitting, you're dead on with the bullpen concerns. That was the big thing that limited them last year, along with a lot of errors and defensive errors, especially in that World Series matchup versus the Dodgers last year. So those are going to be the 2 big things that might hold the Yankees back from making it back to the World Series. But I do like the Yankees bats a lot more than the Red Sox, and I think that if they can solve Crochet, then I think that the Yankees should have no problem moving on to the NLDS. Now, let's get into our NLCS and ALCS predictions. David, I'll hand it over to you. We'll start with the NLCS. Who do you have facing off, and who do you have representing the NL in the World Series?
I will have to take, in the World Series, the Philadelphia Phillies, and on the AL side, I will be taking the Yankees.
I have the Phillies versus the Padres in the NLCS, and then I have the ALCS being the Mariners and the Blue Jays. Mariners have been on an absolute tear before this series with the Dodgers that ended their season, or was at the end of the regular season. They had won, I believe, 17 of 18 or 17 of 19. And I know what I said about the Guardians was, yes, they've been hot, but I'm still going to take the Tigers. The Mariners have the supplementing pieces, Kyle Raleigh, Julio Rodriguez, etc., where with everyone clicking and everyone heating up at the right time, I do think this Mariners team is really going to go far this postseason. So I have the Mariners over the Blue Jays. I like the Blue Jays a little bit more than the Yankees. I feel like a lot of people are counting them out. I think they'll have a chip on their shoulder. They have Springer and some other good, and along with that, there's some really good bats as well, to where I think the Blue Jays can certainly compete with the Yankees and potentially even win that series. So I have the Mariners over the Blue Jays in the ALCS. Then moving over to the NLCS, I have the Phillies over the Padres. The Phillies are one of the best teams in the MLB this year, and overall, I really like their pitching staff, especially their arms, and their bullpen is much deeper, if not one of the deepest in the MLB. I don't like to get too biased with my predictions, but are we really going to think that the Brewers are somehow going to pull something off and actually go on a deep postseason run for once? I say nay. They're probably going to blow it as they always do. And the Padres, if they beat the Cubs, it's likely because of their bats. And I'll take the Padres bats to continue to play well into that series versus the Brewers and wind up beating the Brewers, even though the Brewers have been a really good hitting team this year, which we can't really say about past years. But I'm taking the Padres, and then obviously the Phillies over the Padres. And then World Series, I'm going to go Phillies. Phillies over the Mariners. It's a little conservative going with one of the best teams in the MLB, but I'm going to go with the Phillies. They've been there before. They have the hitters in Trey Turner and Kyle Schwarber. Their pitching staff does size up better with the Mariners. And as much as I want to pick the Mariners, I love the vibes. Randy Arozarena running back the clock again, looking like his former Rays self when they made it to the World Series a couple years ago. I just think it's going to come down to the pitching, and I like the Phillies' arms more than the Mariners. David, who do you have winning the World Series?
Yeah, so let me just go a bit into more detail about why I picked the Phillies. I have the Phillies beating out the Padres. I think the Brewers are also going to blow it. I have the Yankees over the Mariners. Yes, I think the Mariners have been red hot. But I just do think that the Yankees, I think that our hitting is really going to go on a heater throughout this playoffs, and that's what's really going to carry us into the MLB championship now, World Series. I think now the question is whether the Yankees can beat the Phillies. It's going to be really, really hard. A lot of the stars are going to have to align for the Yankees, but just as crazy as October is, I will be taking the Yankees for that reason. I think that our hitting is really going to carry us out throughout this playoffs, and I do think that our pitching won't be the most consistent at times, but I think it'll be consistent enough to be able to win series. Maybe not each game, but it will help us win. It won't let us win each battle, but we'll definitely win the war against each team. And so I think that's why I have the Yankees beating out the Phillies.
The big thing for the Yankees is just last year when they went on their deep postseason run, it really came down to the defensive errors and then the pitching really laying the team down.
Yeah.
The Yankees were unfortunately unable to out-hit their problems versus the Dodgers. The Dodgers just overpowered them and wound up winning the World Series. And again, this is going to be the same question. You have the Yankees going to the World Series because of this. You have them out-hitting a lot of any problems that they might have and run into. Me personally, even if they get out of the AL, if they face up against the Phillies are one of the best defensive teams in baseball. They don't make a lot of mistakes, and that's where it's hard to really stray away from the Phillies. But we'll see what winds up happening. They play the games for a reason, but this was always fun. It's always fun to watch postseason baseball. It's really funny, too, because I don't really watch too much of the regular season. Again, as mentioned in the intro, I like to keep a lot of tabs on things, but I don't really watch it too in-depth. But when the postseason comes around, I'm glued to my TV. I just love postseason baseball. And that'll lead into the NHL season, which is coming up in a week. So I'm having a great time right now, personally. But I think that'll do it for this edition of the Benchwarmer Sports Podcast. We hope you enjoyed this edition where we go through our MLB playoff predictions. For Davian, I'm Raffi. We hope you enjoyed. Let us know in the comments below who you think is going to win the World Series or your overall thoughts on our predictions. And be sure to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and also follow us on TikTok at Benchwarmer_sports. So once again, for Davian, I'm Raffi. We hope you enjoyed. And as always, have a good one. See ya.
Peace.